Josh, you interested in finding out what's going on in the world?
He'll have you on a show. I think I'm getting kind of banned.
Okay, we're rolling.
Come up on me.
We'll come up on you. I have this button down. Let me push it down.
It must be the CNN karma. Somebody made it to MNN.
Yeah, it's hard to see. It doesn't register. It doesn't show, and it hides your eyes so they can't see you. I couldn't see your eyes.
Okay.
Should I take it off?
Yeah, it shades your eyes.
Okay.
And people can't see your good-looking face.
Aw. Hi, this is Paula Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole because we like to go into topics more deeply. I have with me today a guest that has been a guest of mine on many shows, and I'm hoping on many more because he has so much to say, and that is Carl Pearson.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I always enjoy being here, and I do have a few things to say about some very timely matters.
Let's jump right into it. The finances, what's going on in the world?
Well, it's complicated, but basically, starting with Richard Nixon's administration, there has been word from the powers that be, the president or the advisors, to lay off enforcement of law. Let's not have enforcement of law because that hurts companies that try to get bigger. So especially the antitrust laws, don't start enforcing these things.
And that's what you are, an antitrust attorney.
Well,
actually, could you make his graphic say antitrust attorney? Last one we had civil rights.
I'm civil rights, I'm antitrust, and I'm business and litigation, and I do a variety of things, and I'm very much at home jumping around from one to the other.
You're also a Harvard Law School graduate without having gone to high school.
I am hoping that one of these days I can cure that problem.
Really? You care about your
well,
high school diploma?
I think I would like to, at some point, get a high school diploma.
It's on your to-do list, but you're so busy.
I turned down a JD. Harvard, when I graduated from Harvard Law School, they offered me, if I paid $25, they offered to convert my LLB into a JD. And I said, forget it. A doctor of jurisprudence. And that's a highfalutin name, a way of saying that you graduated from law school. But an LLB is the older, traditional degree. But people said, look, a lawyer goes through 3 years. A doctor has only really 2 years of courses and another couple of years of clinical instruction. Now, don't hold me to all this exactly, but lawyers have, I think, 1 more year of theory than doctors. And yet we only get a bachelor's degree, a doctor gets a medical degree. So in order to equalize that in the eyes of the people who don't know that much, namely the public who wouldn't really know, there has been a steady tendency in law schools to issue JDs so that people walk around and say, my son the doctor, who is only a lawyer.
And it would have cost you $25?
And I could have gotten it for $25, but I needed the 25, so I took the position that I didn't want the JD, but it was really the 25.
That is wonderful. You know, the one thing I really love about Carl Pearson is he finds problems and then he finds solutions. So whatever he's going to tell us today, he's going to have a solution. And that's why I love you as a guest on my show.
Here is the basic problem. If you can't understand the problem, you don't know how to solve it. But the minute you really understand the problem thoroughly, then the solution is obvious. So this is where we are in America. We have a major problem. But do you think that the problem was unknown to our leaders? Do you really believe that they didn't understand that the mortgages were toxic, that the mortgages couldn't be, that when the variable rate went up and when the people who had no money at all bought a home, they put $1 down, they didn't have enough money to pay the rent or pay the mortgage or to pay repairs. Do you really believe that that is going to foster home ownership, or is it going to destroy a community to put in people who are going to not pay the mortgage and allow the building to go down the tubes, to take the pipes out possibly, or allow their friends to take the pipes out and sell them, board up the houses, and destroy a neighborhood. So what we
It's
had
kind of
is,
like bringing drugs into
well,
a neighborhood. You often
certainly-
hear there was a plan to ruin neighborhoods with drugs.
Anybody could tell you that if you allow people to buy a home that do not have the ability to finance
Secure
it on a day-to-day basis, that it's
inviting
inevitable.
trouble.
It's inevitable. But the only one thing you could say is that if they held the building for maybe 3 months or 6 months, and if it went up in value, maybe they can sell it out and make some money.
So you're banking on a sick economy
Well,
in a way.
you can't keep having property go up. But let's take number one problem, and it's not really the number one problem at all, but let's take the problem of mortgages. We allowed too many people to have mortgages, so that this caused an explosion in the construction of homes. It caused an explosion in the demand for homes. It caused the price of homes to skyrocket. And along with that, it created new products for the banks, because
Right.
previously the banks and mortgage brokers couldn't sell mortgages or homes to people that weren't qualified. Suddenly, 3/4 of the country that never qualified for home ownership now are in the market. So
Right.
all sorts of mortgage brokers and banking distribution systems and offices were set up all over. You see the banks, and every corner has another bank branch. All of this was designed to capture the immediate profitability of making a mortgage to somebody
Right.
who buys a home. And they then took the mortgage off their books. The bank made an immediate profit. The mortgage broker made an immediate profit. The real estate person who sold his property made a profit. And now we have stuck that property into the hands of somebody who can't pay a mortgage. But we get rid of the mortgage by selling it to a pool. So we
And now
bury...
why would the pool buy that?
Well,
why would people buy this?
we caused all this to happen. This is part of what the plan was. The pool buys it. Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae bought them. They guaranteed
Explain
them. It's
what
the same
Freddie
way
Mac
they
and
buy.
Fannie Mae is.
They are two government agencies almost, who we always knew were government agencies, but we gave them the respectability of pretending they were not government agencies and that they could go out and make a profit. So they pay themselves $100 million a year, $50 million a year. They make a profit for themselves, and they go out on a limb and get more and more mortgages and show more and more profitability for the corporation, taking on toxic mortgages through
Well, why do
guarantee.
you say respectability? Is
Well,
our government not
because
respectable?
well, the government often sets up entities where they can put it off the books. It's not on the books of the government, even though it now goes on the books when we buy them out.
In other words, it's off the books when it makes profit for somebody, but then it goes on the books when
when
it's lost?
when they take the money
They have
out,
to be bailed
put it
out.
in their pocket, and now the company's on its way down, they then turn it back over to the government and say, oh, we've made our billions on it now. The government has to pick up the pieces.
Okay, so how can we, the people who have a government, stand up against this?
Well,
can Office of City Attorney General help?
Well, the Office of the Attorney General, let me tell you what institutions failed us. First of all, the Federal Reserve is owned by the major banks. It's not a government agency. It's
Right.
owned by the major banks. It's
Right.
another Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. It's another non-government institution. But we go to the Fed, we listen to the Fed as if it's the government, but it's not.
Right.
It's the banks that are lending America money.
So could a city attorney general, or how about
So-
the
so-
regular attorney general?
well,
Why aren't they prosecuting?
Here are the different. Prosecution is in the hands of President Cheney. President Cheney controls.
For the Federal Reserve, for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, all of those?
The federal government.
President Cheney?
The federal government has one prosecutor, and he's appointed by the president. You can argue that who is president, who has the control of the presidency, but we have one prosecutor, and everything runs through that person. So if the one prosecutor federally decides not to prosecute anyone, then there's no prosecution. You know,
And who is that one prosecutor?
well, it's now a former Judge Mukasey, who was involved in the long trial with the terrorists and that, and left the bench and was appointed as the Attorney General for the United States. He's the chief prosecutor of the United States, but he is there at the will of the president.
I heard bad things about him from Dean Lauren, but tell me,
I
how
don't know any bad things at all. I mean, the problem is that politics dictates here, so that whoever is there, we have the Department of Justice, for example, that's under the Attorney General. The Department of Justice supposedly is enforcing the nation's antitrust laws, but they don't do it. They allowed every merger that ever was ever conceived to take place. They spend a lot of time analyzing them.
Every
and then allow
merger
them
that
all.
was ever conceived
Yeah, well, they
to
allow
take
them
place.
all. Every
I mean, I just heard there's a huge server farm up in Seattle where both Google and Microsoft are. They're across the Columbus River.
That's called the Dallas up in along in the state of Oregon. It's in Oregon along the Washington River or something like that.
Right.
It's a farm for that, and Microsoft is doing it, and now Google's going to put it on board ship apparently and put it out into the ocean where they can have less cost of electricity because of the cooling effect of the water. So things are moving along.
Are they away from jurisdiction, though?
Well, that's not the purpose of it.
Is that not the purpose?
I don't think that's the purpose, but
Sorry
they're
to
moving in
interrupt
that area. And I've been following it because I have an antitrust suit against Google for monopolization. But why am I the only one in the world to be
Hopefully
suing
you
Google
won't
for
be.
monopolization? Why not the Justice Department?
Yeah, why?
So they just announced that they hired an attorney who I know, Sandy Litvak, to look into whether anything should be done by the Justice Department concerning Yahoo's apparent agreement with Google that would give Google 90% of the search market. They already have 70%. Yahoo has 20. Yahoo wants to use Google now to do its search advertising. Instead of Yahoo, Yahoo is giving up and saying we can make more money with Google than we can with ourselves, so we want to go that road.
Right.
Anyway, that's a big problem because Google controls information. It is so broad-based, they're getting set to knock Microsoft out of the box.
Right.
Google is putting the programs that Microsoft makes money on and offering them for free on a website, so you don't have to pay Microsoft to run Microsoft Office. You can just go into the clouds, it is said.
Right.
Go to a Google website, and then you will get all those things for free, and probably better to some extent, I'm sure.
Right.
But all of this goes back to the lack of enforcement of law. Do you believe that we now know that bigness is a danger? Do you agree now that we suddenly know that? Why are we still allowing mergers when we know that bigness is a danger? Why does
because they're so big, we're scared. We think we're going to lose what we have.
But do you think that we ever knew before that a company could be too big to fail, such as Chrysler? Did we ever have a problem with Chrysler? Didn't we learn from Chrysler back in the 1980s? Didn't we learn there that you can have bigness, too much of it? And we financed Chrysler and bailed them out. We financed Continental Bank and got them out of it. So we're taking these big companies, and we've been doing it for years. We give money to the stadiums, we give money to the New York Times, we give money to the big guys, and we allow them to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Why do we do that when we know that if they fail that we're going to have to even give more money? Why aren't we cutting back on the size of these companies? Why aren't we allowing competition?
Well, look, when antitrust came in, what was the circumstance that it came in? There must have been heroic
Rockefeller
people.
Oil. It came in at 1898 or so, with the Rockefeller having something like 75 corporations that transported oil and monopolized railroad transportation costs and drove everyone else out of business. So they broke up Standard Oil, which might have been 56 different companies, and broke them into all sorts of smaller
Is this what you envision can happen to Google?
Well, Google, I think, really should probably become a public utility, like an electric company, and they charge everyone the same rate.
When I had my cellular telephone license in Kentucky, we had to go before a Public Utilities Commission.
We ought to have everyone be charged the same rate. We ought to pay off the shareholders of Google for whatever they own and just and nationalize Google instead of nationalizing all these banks. I mean, That's another story, but Google is really a far greater problem than anything because they dominate information.
Right.
They control the entire world in that respect. Every field is affected by it. If you don't have enforcement of law by the Department of Justice, by the Federal Trade Commission, by the SEC, by the Attorneys General, by the EEOC, all of these different agencies, if they are lax and they don't enforce the law, then they allow the big companies to expand and expand and expand because nobody's stopping them. You can't expect a private person to stop them. You need government money to stop them. Therefore, why not have one person, a town attorney general, be charged with the duty of enforcing the laws that these government agencies no longer enforce? Just have one person at the town responsible. Instead of having a lawyer in charge of slip and fall cases where people fall on the sidewalk and you have a whole army of lawyers there, how about having just one lawyer enforcing the rights of the people instead of their duties? We have enough prosecutors, we have enough jails, we have 25% of the world's population that are in jail. We have 25% of them. If we have 25% of the world's jailed population in America, we only have 5% of the population.
5% of the population.
We have 5 times as many as we should have.
Right.
So this thing is out there.
We shouldn't have any.
We should we should be reasonable in this. But we don't have enforcement of law, and that is what caused the whole thing to go. That's what caused globalization. That's what's caused the banks to go under.
But just a second, when you say, I have this idea of an ideal society where people, the natural tendency for human beings is to contribute. So if you show them the right way, they'll do the right thing. It's when you deny voices. But it seems the biggest criminals are the ones that are going on right now with this Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. And so when you follow the punishment model,
it
doesn't seem to work.
We set them up to do that, though. The politicians set them up and said, do it. Is it Freddie Mac's problem? They were told to do it.
I understand.
And then the SEC doesn't require that they disclose on their financials that what they did doesn't have value, so that the institution that protects investors failed to require banks to disclose that they have nothing, that they don't have any assets.
So what I'm saying is, what does the investor do? At one time, we put into place antitrust laws. At one time, we put into place the Securities and Exchange Commission laws. It seems like we're on such a crisis right now.
You know what the crisis is? That we're going to work 20 years for lower pay, for higher taxes, trying to pay off what these people have done to us. We have a 20-year obligation as sort of a slave. We're slaves for the next 20 years to pay off the excesses where they've already stolen the money. They have the money now.
But the average person doesn't even understand
I
this.
know that.
That's what I'm saying. When you go to a lawyer, it's because you don't know the law.
Well,
You've got someone representing you.
The reason is that the press is monopolized, and the press doesn't
so now we're
tell
back
you.
to media.
Well, we're back to the whole thing. It's a seamless web. If we have people that are elected to Congress by the rich, and the rich then say, don't have any law enforcement, at least not in my industry. So every industry doesn't want any law enforcement. So the politicians grab the money and they wink at it. They talk about stronger enforcement of this, but what happens is that you have innocent people getting convicted in jail and being shipped upstate New York, and that's law enforcement.
Yeah, and they do relatively petty things as far as the fabric of society.
So we have law enforcement, but it's not the right type.
But what do they think is holding things together? People who are leaders, you think they're brought up in a way of understanding of their responsibility and the position to which they've been born and the power to which they have access.
A leader would say, look, if you as the voting public can't get your act together, I'm not going to be the victim. I need to get reelected. You forced me into getting $10 million. Once I get that money, I really am foreclosed in what I can do. You change the system. I can't. I'm a newcomer to Washington. What can I do? They don't even listen to me. So everyone doesn't have any power.
They don't even listen to me.
Well, no, the newcomer. The newcomer has no power.
Right.
So we have the committee system where one person controls this, another person controls that, like Ways and Means and Wrangle.
That whoever's been there with seniority over time.
The seniority, so that they have
just manipulates the newcomer.
And they can force the newcomer to get nothing. They can say, you get no money because you're not cooperating.
Now, how would the City Attorney General help
this?
If you have many of these all over the country.
You have such a convoluted, difficult legal situation that the average person does not know how to cut through it.
Right.
In a small town, the legal expertise is basically zoning. They don't know that much about civil rights, about antitrust, about the Justice Department, mergers, EEAC. It's complicated, and they know they know zoning. They reel and deal in trading zoning and prohibiting it. They don't have the sophistication to protect themselves. So Walmart comes into town, they don't know what to do.
So you want someone that's
You
sophisticated.
need to have a sophisticated lawyer that will handle a variety of basically federal causes of action with other state causes of action, and to use them against the people that are hurting the town. To be imaginative and use them and fight back and try to recapture some of the money and property that's been stolen from the town, and then use that to give the members of the town, that is the residents, free health care, free broadband, reduced real estate taxes, reduced rent, and maybe even some dental expense and drug expense. Those are the things that
how many attorneys are there like you throughout the country that could? Now, how many could come to your school if you start to teach and educate people?
I just spoke with a fellow from a law school in upstate in the northeastern sector, and asked him if they would set up a program to train lawyers to become a town or city attorney general. I've started the ball rolling because we need one for each town, village, county. There's 40,000. That's 40,000 people we need.
And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that Carl really knows what he's talking about, because he used to have a school, right? You were, what would you call
18 years. I started the paralegal field.
Yeah, he started the paralegal field.
I even had a first-year law course, and I had other very imaginative courses. But
so you can do it. You're the guy.
Well, the field of regulation, the field of education, is highly regulated for the purpose of preventing good education. I mean, you shouldn't even laugh at that, but that's what it is.
That's amazing.
If you would free up education, like I can set up a free college, an equivalency college in any town or village in the United States, an absolutely free tuition
You've
college.
got a show on that, so I'll link
I can
to
do
that.
that. And the regular colleges are charging $70 an hour to sit in a class. $70 per student per class hour. I can do it for less than $2, and I know how to raise the two so that the tuition for the townspeople would be free.
Tuition-free
But no, you don't hear from anyone that wants it, because the media is not able to get out anything of value to the people.
Well, we're creating media that reaches the people that are actually have hands-on and the practical people that want to get things done. Part of the idea of Carl's tuition-free university was that a prospective employer would be more likely to hire somebody whose education he trusts, because he actually knows the professors that were giving the education, and the prospective employee is not burdened by sometimes $250 million worth of debt just to pay back his education. So imagine how hard such a worker would have to slave away. So if you were a prospective employer, who would you choose? If they were equally qualified. One doesn't have maybe the Harvard degree, but it's not even Harvard. Even rinky-dink universities that are certified are still very costly. So if it wasn't for the recognition of the degree, but they were both equivalent in terms of the education, and as an employer, if you were confident that you've got the man for the job, you'd obviously choose for someone with less debt.
Yeah, because the other person with more debt will have to get additional employment. He won't be happy. He or she will not be happy with the wage level, because it won't even pay off their loans.
Exactly.
So they will be leaving the job. It'll be dissatisfying.
So with this in mind, you know how you can educate lawyers who today aren't even imagining the office of City Attorney General. So in a way, you're also creating a new job. And more employment, not only.
It's more that you need a group of people surrounding the attorney, the city attorney general.
So it's an entire grassroots industry.
It is a replacement for the existing governmental agencies that don't do anything.
Right.
That's all that it is.
So in
it's
other
a
words,
replacement.
Roughly speaking, could you say federal versus state laws, and now we're having even city, state, and federal, and now the federal has gotten so corrupt and so unwieldy that it's almost like nature is seeking balance, and we could have the balance come up through the roots.
I think the grassroots approach is the way of looking at it, that you can take a single town of 5,000 people and change it dramatically in spite of all the adverse things. You can change it dramatically. And if you do, it will catch on and go to the next communities. I think we have to have grassroots change, and that will ultimately cause the top to wither and change.
To wither and change.
Yeah,
right.
but we can't change it at the top. Even if Obama gets in, that doesn't change the other people. They haven't done anything so far except hurt the economy.
Right.
They haven't done anything. Why do we think that electing Obama, and I'm for him, but why would it make any difference? What's he going to do? Is Pelosi going to suddenly change and do something that's helpful?
Right. None of us are against good rhetoric, but we want to do something substantial.
Right. So
is what
I think that change at the bottom by having enforcement of law. We don't need more laws. We just need enforcement for the people.
Exactly. What else would you have to say about the City Attorney General's office and how it relates to 9/11 and Dr. Pepper, who said it was a side issue?
Well,
Dr. William Pepper.
Dr. William Pepper is tossed the Attorney General out even after he had agreed with me and the steering committee that he would accept it. He would come into the program with the Attorney General there. So he came in and then rapidly tossed out. And
now, when you say he came in, who is he to come in?
Well,
who is this
Les
guy?
Jameson asked him to come in, and without any authority, really, Les just appointed Dr. Pepper, and Dr. Pepper went around and got a lot of his friends, none of them in New York, to come into this initial proposed commission. And then Pepper said that now that you have these petitions out there and signed, I'm going to and you have a commission formed, I'm going to tell you that I'm taking the Attorney General out of it. If you don't like it, I walk.
And why did they care if he walked? Who is this?
Well,
who is he?
Les cared. And
why did Les care?
Well, only because
was he throwing money?
No, he would be getting some income from it. That's the reason.
And this is the reason why the commission should be self-funded, right? You were saying there's no plan.
Well,
when you
they don't have a plan. They're going to raise money, and they might get it all from one person. Maybe somebody who doesn't want 9/11 to be identified.
I see.
Who knows who they're going to get the money from?
So without a plan, it becomes rather dangerous.
Well, I would say
people think it's been reinvestigated, and it really hasn't.
I'm really never really went down that road of believing that is what's going to happen. I just see that not having a plan means that the petition cannot win. It can't succeed legally.
It can't succeed legally.
Yeah, and therefore, why are they doing it? Why are they raising money and signing petitions if it won't work out? If they know that it won't work out, why are they doing it?
Why?
Well, they're doing it because it looks like something's happening.
I see.
But if they know that it can't happen and they are making it look like it's going to happen, you can draw your own conclusion.
It's a terrible conclusion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's heartbreaking when you think. To me, 9/11 is it's such a sterling example of a crime against a people who can't protect themselves.
We have all sorts of things. I mean, I thought that a 9/11 commission would be useful, and we needed to have it financed. The town and the city attorney general could provide that money, and I put it in, built it in, because I switched from the New York City charter that did not require funding to the New York State Home Rule law that does. So I built that in.
Explain that. It didn't require.
Initially, when I got the idea for doing this, and it was my idea based upon an idea given to me from someone in Washington, state of Washington. So I proposed this, and Les and the others said, it's a great idea, let's do it. So I wrote the initial petition following the law that this person in Washington said is the basis for it. And I looked it up in the New York City Charter and found the provision. So I wrote a petition based on the New York City Charter. There was no requirement there of showing money. Then people warned me that you've got to have funding here, and I started looking at other law, and I found that the New York State Home Rule law is the one that's generally used, and that requires funding. So I said, where are we going to get the funding from? So I then said, hey, this is ideal for the New York City Attorney General. We can raise billions of dollars, and we still can. We can raise $5 billion a year for New York City. Why don't they want that?
We're out of time, and we got it straight from the horse's mouth. Thank you so much, Carl, for explaining that. And thank you for joining me. I'm Paula Gloria, and this is Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. So we were able to get that tied up, but it's a huge topic, and I know every time I edit, I learn more and more. It's a lot coming at you.
It's a lot of things here, but it's all pervasive.